Turning our attention to a few running stories that have come up since last week. The Deloitte audit report on the National Cathedral makes for some very grim reading. We have gone through the report with some very, very concerning summaries. We'll be speaking to Minister for Government Communication about what the government intends to do with the report, and more importantly, what the government seeks to do with the site, because the project appears to have stalled and there isn't clarity on what should be done about it. We are told the country spent close to 340 million cedis, or has spent close to 340 million cedis so far on this project, which you can really say has not taken off yet. So that's coming up shortly. What I'm asking you to do is 72 pages, quite a lot. We know that this audit was commissioned somewhere in 2023.
Correct.
And the report was never released until only a few days ago. So Francisca, if you can just walk me through what the key findings of the audit report done by Deloitte are.
Yeah, so I'll take you through 5 key findings, and there are some breakdown of the expenses as well as recommendations. So the first one is governance and legal structure. The National Cathedral was registered as a private company limited by guarantee July 18, 2019. However, the state provided full funding for the project without the approval of Parliament, as required by Article 181 of the 1992 Constitution. Now, we also glean from the report that all disbursements totaling 339 million thereabouts were made directly from the Controller and Accountant General's Department to consultants, contractors, and service providers.
Okay, so that's point number one.
That's point number one. So point number 2, financial irregularities. An amount of 225 million Ghana cedis, and I'm estimating, was paid to various service providers and contractors without any evidence of work done.
Wow.
Yes. There were several instances where payments were made for contracts that were not approved by the Board of Trustees. The authors stated that they noted that 10 different payments were made to the same consultant for the same purpose within a short period, with varying amounts, but the same reference number.
Gosh.
And then...
That's all under rubric number 2.
Yes.
Number 2. So that's under what you call financial irregularities.
Yes.
All right.
Then you go to number 3, contractual and consultant issues. The engagement of consultants and project managers did not follow the competitive tendering process as outlined in the Public Procurement Act 2003, Act 663. In some instances, contracts were backdated to regularize already executed services and payments. Messrs. Ajay Associates was paid over $21 million without appropriate approvals and without value for money analysis.
Wow.
So let's go to point 4, which looks at accountability and oversight lapses.
All right.
The Board of Trustees was often not aware of the payments being made on behalf of the cathedral. Minutes of meetings revealed lack of proper financial briefings. The authors of the report say we also found no evidence of independent audits or financial reports submitted to the board or Parliament from 2019 to 2022. So the final point, which is 5, non-compliance and legal concerns. The Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, was violated when payments were made without budgetary allocation or parliamentary approval. The Ministry of Finance authorized payments in violation of procurement and public investment procedures. There are reasonable grounds to suspect criminal misconduct. We recommend referral to IOCO and the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Financial overview. So this is summarizing the disbursements. Total public funds released. This is 339.
So that's 339 million.
339 million
cedis.
CDs estimated.
That's around $97 million.
Based on the
prevailing exchange rate at the time. Okay.
Total to consultants, that's an estimated 113 million Ghana cedis. Land and compensation, 65 million Ghana cedis. Operational and administrative expenses, that's about 29 million Ghana cedis.
Wow.
Unclassified expenses, that's into bracket no documentation, 25 million Ghana cedis. And then there's a further breakdown of expenditure. The report says over 60% of the total funds were paid without adequate documentation or adherence to procurement procedures.
Wow. Over 60% of the funds were paid without adequate documentation or
adherence
procurement procedures. Wow.
Procurement procedures, yes. So the conclusion and recommendations, I'll read that bit to you. It says, we conclude that there was a systematic breakdown of control, absence of oversight, and breaches of key public financial laws. Immediate steps must be taken to recover funds where appropriate, and responsible individuals must be held accountable through criminal or administrative action.
Wow. So that's quite serious. Now, let's just mention that this is what you could call a forensic audit.
Yes.
Correct? Conducted by the National Cathedral of Ghana.
Let me just add...
conducted on the National Cathedral project.
Yes. So let me just add what is captured as the auditor's call to action. Refer implicated individuals to IOCO and OSP, suspend ongoing disbursements pending restructuring, reconstitute governance structure and board, and commission an independent value for money audit.
But did the report specifically implicate anybody? From what I have seen, I'm not sure. It seems quite general, mentioning boards and disbursements. You know, there are some audits that specific individuals are mentioned, but did you see any individual implicated directly in this way?
No, not that. Of course, I mean, there are pointers to a particular individual or some individuals who may be responsible for specific units operating under the National Cathedral. But in terms of specifically citing someone as having conducted himself criminally, for which reason criminal liability should.
So you may have to glean. So if the OSP or the IOCO wants to then go into the report, then they may ask for the paying officer to be called.
That's why there was a recommendation that there should be further investigation for purposes of exacting criminal liability or administrative liability, as the case may be.
And I noticed they call for a value for money audit, which means that this was a forensic audit that looked at financials, governance, procurement, and compliance with legal frameworks, as against value for money, which then could mean if you spend X, is it the best possible way we could have spent the X? So that's a different sort of term of art than this general, which is also quite important though.
Yeah.
Right? But I think on the face of this audit, clearly there's enough information to proceed on some more serious question answering. Correct?
Exactly. I mean, if the findings suggest that certain people took decisions that meant a breach of the Procurement Act, for instance. I mean, people have been removed from office for, similar breaches. The Procurement Act, it's passed by Parliament, or was passed by Parliament for a good reason. Now, in that act, there are specific, demands imposed on public officials using our public purse to act in a particular way. Where there are breaches, the Act recommends prosecution in appropriate cases and directs the judges as to what to do, including incarceration. So if it is established that some of these things were done with criminal intent and they satisfy the requirements established under the Act, then the question will be whether the Attorney General is interested in pursuing the matter in the court of law or would want to end the matter at the administrative level. Whatever it is, it will come down to the evidence available and whether indeed the AG is satisfied that he is sure of persuading a court of law to lean towards incarceration or conviction.
The other problem I have is that
But just before you move on, because there are some recommendations for investigations, typically OSP and IOCO, I wanted to bring to our attention when a bench warrant was issued for the arrest of Ken Ofori-Atta, who is the former finance minister, who is under investigation. One of the things they were investigating him for is the procurement and the payment processes in relation to the National Cathedral.
So that seems to have been.
Yes.
All right. Now, let's come to the government Minister for Government Communications and MP, Felix Kwatsu-Fosu. Thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
So we are told that this report has existed for some time, but it was only quote unquote leaked recently. Is this correct?
Well, I don't know about leakage. What it is that, the National Cathedral matter is one of 280 different cases being investigated by the state investigation agencies. For instance, NIB is looking into the matter as part of the broader oral activity. And then we are also aware that the Office of Special Prosecutor is looking into it. So as far as we are concerned as a government, it's a matter that we will bring to finality at some point based on the outcome of investigations. But sometime last week or thereabouts, we noticed some upsurge in, if you like, misleading commentary around the subject when elements within the opposition in Parliament and some media personalities went on the offensive and claimed that Deloitte and Touch had conducted an audit into the affairs of the National Cathedral Secretariat and giving them a clean bill of health. I must indicate that even though the National Cathedral Secretariat is set up as a company limited by guarantee, because they mostly use public funds in their activities, the arrangement is such that the government has a regular briefing on the activities. And under the current dispensation, it is the Minister for Local Government, Religious Affairs and Culture who supervises the activities. So, government got copies of the audit report. Now, the audit themselves are contained in 5 different reports. 5 different reports. Now, the reports are such that the National Cathedral Secretariat themselves engaged Deloitte and Touch to carry out routine audits of their financial statements. And then I'm sure that you are very familiar with what a financial statement is. Nothing more than stating the asset position of the company, recording losses, showing cash flow trajectory, and stuff like that. It is not an elaborate inquiry into the overall performance of the project with a view to detecting flaws and challenges and problems that need resolution. So if you look at the financial statements in the way that they've been audited, they don't disclose much beyond ensuring. And in fact, I have seen the contract or the agreement between the National Cathedral Secretariat and Deloitte and Touch. And it is clear what their scope is. It is extremely limited. However, after Deloitte and Touch conducted the audit of the financial statements, they issued management letters. And it is in that management letter that they highlight serious cases of financial irregularities, breach of various regulations and laws, and unexplained expenditure. So anybody who wants to assess the state of the National Cathedral and how the project has been executed would necessarily have to look at the management letter, because that is where the meat is. But for some reason, the MPP MPs who got the financial statement or the audited financial statements chose to create the impression that that was a be-all and end-all. And that those financial statements have said that there was nothing untoward. Somehow, officials at the National Cathedral Secretariat themselves also played along and regrettably misled the public when they issued statements highlighting this audited financial statement and presenting it as evidence that nothing went wrong. Meanwhile, there can be no honest reading of the management letter which can lead to a conclusion that nothing untoward happened. Indeed, it is replete with evidence of clear financial mismanagement and wrongdoing. So I don't know whether you have time. I can go through some of it.
No, don't worry. We have the report.
Yes.
I'll come to it. My point is that could it be that
yes,
because specific individual names were not mentioned in this type of audit, was that what probably could have misled them to think that then they had been cleared, quote unquote?
No, Bernard, I have a difficulty accepting that narrative to the extent that the report makes it clear that there are clear discrepancies. Procurement violations have been occasioned. There are unexplained expenditure and serious financial irregularities. And we are talking very big money. We are not talking minuscule amounts. Now, the remit of the audit report is such that Deloitte could not have pointed accusing fingers. What they did was to establish facts that, for instance, this law had been breached, that law had been breached, this amount is unaccounted for, and what have you. It is a forensic audit that would then delve into how those breaches were occasioned or whose responsibility it was that the irregularities were recorded. And these are vastly experienced people at the National Cathedral Secretariat. Indeed, some of them have supervised mega projects in their own churches. And so they should be aware clearly how these things happen. Again, how can a member of parliament, for instance, the Honorable Kennedy Osenyako, who has been around for quite some time, and I'm sure has seen an audit report or two, come to the conclusion that merely because specific names are not mentioned in the report, then somebody has been cleared? I find that very difficult to accept, Bernard.
Fair enough. But from what we've read in the report, clearly there were high levels of financial mismanagement. Is government going to then say people should pay back, or are we not yet there? Because we've seen, for example, we're told that over 60% of the expenses made either violated the procurement law or were not accompanied by adequate financial documentation. That's pretty serious. Okay.
Yeah, they are very, very serious.
So
findings.
My question is that is government minded to say, give us back our money, or government is saying investigate, and if there are criminal components, people should face criminal trial? Where is government's mind on what we've seen so far from this report?
I think what this report does is to highlight those insights. I must indicate that these findings are not significantly different from some of the things that came up when, for instance, the Honorable Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa started focusing on this cathedral and pointing out some of the downsides to what was being done. But the first point of call at this stage is to carry out a forensic audit. So that, for instance, if there is a discrepancy of 4.9 million Ghana cedis in the payment to David Ajayi, you know exactly how it occurred and who is responsible for that kind of shortfall. It is at that stage that you can then take action, either through prosecution or some efforts to retrieve the money, or surcharging the individual or individuals responsible for that kind of loss. That is the reason why the Auditor General has been requested to commission a forensic audit. You know that to the extent that public funds have been used, the Auditor General has a remit. The Auditor General on his own, if he finds that someone has occasioned the loss or done something that has led to the state losing some money, can surcharge the person. He can also recommend prosecution, because his report will eventually end up with Parliament. Public Accounts Committee will look at it, and then they will make recommendations for the Attorney General to act. But we are not there yet. We first need to commission a forensic audit to understand exactly who did what, how, and when. And that is what the President has authorized.
Fair enough. The Deloitte report concludes that the project faces, quote, material uncertainty over its future. Now, the President has also directed the Board of Trustees to be dissolved. What is the way forward in terms of the project itself? Let's forget about people who did wrong and what will happen to them. We're talking about a vast amount of land is being dug up in a place of prime real estate, board dissolved. Is that going to be the end, or is the government minded to reduce its losses by doing something with the site, or to build the cathedral but with a different approach?
Well, I think it's an important question that you've asked, and there are many who have asked the same question. First of all, I think everybody agrees that the people who have supervised this pattern of financial irregularity and unsupported payments and violations can no longer continue to be in office. That is why the Secretariat itself has been dissolved. It has been dissolved since 1st May 2025. And in fact, their salaries were stopped on 29th April 2025. So that is taken care of. because the Cathedral, National Cathedral Ghana, that's the full name, is incorporated as a company limited by guarantee, it is not as straightforward to dissolve the board of trustees. So the Attorney General has to work hand in glove with the Register of Companies to ensure the dissolution of the board of trustees. That will take a couple of weeks, I can imagine. So that is underway. Now, regarding the project itself, let me use this opportunity to clarify that contrary to some reports that emerged last week or the other, that the government has decided to turn the site into a cultural center or some convention center. Nothing of the sort has happened. What happened was that there's a continental body that rents some office space in Accra. They approached the 24-hour Economic Secretariat and proposed that given all the controversies and the lack of appetite to continue the project, they would request for portions of the land to be ceded to them for them to construct their continental head office. But in lieu of the land, they were prepared to build Ghana a convention center and a cultural center and other facilities. But it is not the proposal that has been accepted or even considered by government. So that must be placed on record. The second point is that I can state with authority that President Mahama, for as long as he remains president, is unprepared to see even a pesewa of taxpayers' money put into this National Cathedral project. But as for what exactly will be done with the site, that determination will be made after we've had all the facts following the conduct of the forensic audit. But I can assure that no public funds is going to go into this cathedral. But again, I don't know whether you are aware, contrary to the general belief that we've spent $58 million on the hole, I mean, some call it the most expensive hole in the world. As I speak to you, there are interim payment certificates totaling $39 million that the contractor has submitted to the finance minister for payment. If you add this to the $58 million, we are talking $97 million. So that is how much it has cost the nation to produce that hole that you see. Again, because of the way that the contract is structured, it is so lopsided against us, such that every single day that passes without the termination of this contract, we incur costs, because the contractor had to rent some equipment, including the cranes that you see there, which have to be paid for on a daily basis. And once the contract subsists, that payment has to be made. So the president has also authorized that the Attorney General should take steps to abrogate that contract so that we cut our losses at this stage, pending the final determination of what will be done with this particular space. And it's a 15.7 acre piece of land, very prime land in the heart of Accra.
At the beginning of this interview, you said there were over 280 different cases drawing from oral, so we won't have time to go through all. Something caught my attention. When the president was in Eastern Region and speaking about roads, he also said that there were some roads that he believed double payment had been made for, where payment had been made by the road fund, and then the finance ministry was also made to pay, and that there was some audit that was supposed to be conducted. Can you elaborate on that? Because I'm sort of pulling that out of the point around audits. Okay, is there a specific audit on the roads, and what is the scope?
Indeed, it is true. And among others, for instance, recently Wutumi was arrested by Yoko and Anamoksha. One of them included a road contract project that he had. He was paid some money, but the amount of work he has done is not commensurate with the amount of money he was paid. So that is being looked into. There's also another case where an Indian construction firm was paid $30 million or so to construct a road. And assessments of the work done shows that he's done only 1% of the work given to him to do. And so the Ministry of Roads is pursuing him. And then when we came into office, we noticed that total commitments, in other words, the amount of contract that the government had entered into before we came into power, was in excess of 120 billion Ghana cedis. Now, that required a bit of auditing to ascertain their veracity. And as I speak to you, according to the roads minister, he is able to work such that he is determined that about 50% of this is not valid and therefore cannot be honored. And then there is the audit that the president is speaking about. That is work that is ongoing. And so I'm unable to disclose the outcome at the moment. But in the fullness of time, the answers will become apparent and we will know exactly who did what. And to the extent that evidence of wrongdoing or criminality is found against anybody, they will be held to account.
Wonderful. Finally, it seems as if the ministers are taking their turns at this newly created forum that you've done. When is the road minister coming? Because for us here, road is our baby. So
indeed, he will come. He will come. It is that there are quite a number of ministers, and we are also hard pressed for time. So you see that we do it 3 times a week. This week, yesterday, the defense minister was there. Tomorrow, the lands and natural resources minister will be there. Then on Thursday, the finance minister will go to Parliament to present the media budget. But that one has to percolate a bit, so we won't do it on Friday. But on Monday, the Attorney General will come and give a briefing on oral. And then next week, Wednesday, Friday, other ministers will come. So eventually, the roads minister will come and he will give a full briefing about his sector. I'm also, in fact, in the mid-year budget, look forward to definite pronouncements on road construction and what government's commitment is to ensuring that we improve the conditions of roads across the length and breadth of this country. I know that there is actually a project or a program that seeks to rehabilitate roads in over 100 constituencies or districts across Ghana. But the finance minister will give flesh to it. And then the roads minister will eventually appear on the Government Accountability Series platform to shed further light on it.
all right, we'll leave it here. Thank you, Felix Kwachio-Fosu, who is the Minister for Government Communications. Well, so the minister said government is thinking of various things to do. So it's quite clear that the government itself is not very sure. But it's what he says, that the president says they're not going to use taxpayers' money to build the cathedral. So even if the cathedral is going to be built, they will have to find other monies to do it. So for now, we wait to see. Of course, he says the NIB and Yoko and OSP are also interested. So we'll also have to wait for those findings. And number 3, he said the Auditor General has been asked to do a forensic audit. So quite a lot of things happening. The other thing that intrigued me was that saying there are about 280 different kinds of investigations going on for different things. All right, we're able to talk only about the road one, where the president said in the Eastern region that some contractors had been paid twice for the same project and some had been paid for work not done. So those are some of the things we wait for. So if you look at some of the delay in road projects, it looks like the audits have to finish. Don't forget that the arrears numbers keeps changing. Initially it was 60 billion, now we are told it's a bit lower. So these are some of the things that happen when there's a change in government. People need to check and make sure that value for money is done. And I'm also told that there will be a value for money audit done for the cathedral as well. So there's a lot of information that's going to come out. The question is, do you have the institutional capacity and the willingness and the commitment to follow through, to do it in a way that's not political vindictiveness, but really in the public interest? That's the real test, okay? Which is why the way we've been approaching discussions around these matters must be structured so that it does not appear as if it's a witch hunt, okay? So, and the OSP also, I believe, is in a very interesting situation because it was set up to deal with specific kinds of corruption. So it will be interesting to see what it's able to accomplish alongside what Yoko, NIB, and others do. Because I think this is the period for it to sort of justify its difference. You get it? Because there are many bodies. Siraj is there, Yoko is there, SFO is now what? They have a different name. Yoko. And then there's also the one that Financial Intelligence Center,
FIC,
who also have some specific things they do. So OSP is sort of is the newest.
Yeah,
it's the newest in relation to that. Yeah. So my point is that with all these 200 and something cases, how many will the government hive off? So the minister said they believe OSP and Yoko are on the cathedral matter, which they recognize. My question is, will they hive it off to say this one should go here? Who determines who does what? Because after all of this is done, AG comes in.
Well, not necessarily. It's all a question of what the facts say and what the law says about the jurisdiction of one particular institution. Mm-hmm. So if it is an economic and organized crime, so that maybe, for instance, people were using the name of the National Cathedral to carry out, transnational criminal activity. So they have set up their own enterprise, claim that they are collecting money in the name of the National Cathedral, and then they are funneling that to do all kinds of things for they themselves, for their own benefit. And give
200 or whatever cases. For some of them, the institutions know that this is my mandate,
Exactly.
so they'll go.
Yes.
Nobody has to tell them.
Yes,
For some of them, somebody will recommend and forward. So maybe somebody starts an investigation and realizes that this is more to do with a certain kind of financial crime. So let me rather push it to this guy.
So, for instance, if there is straightforward breach of the Procurement Act, which strictly speaking has nothing to do with, say, corruption, the Attorney General has the mandate to, deal with that matter without need to look at any other matter. But where, for instance, maybe the people who were receiving the contract were paying back kickback.
Good. And
that is corruption, in which case the OSP's mandate is properly triggered. And related offences that sort of flow from that act of corruption can also be prosecuted within the ambit of related criminal activity.
To what extent do these agencies collaborate? I ask this because usually when you speak to government, one of the big problems with government is inter-agency collaboration. They are usually turf wars too. Where everybody, remember the thing we said about the ports, where different bodies were all going to check the same thing. It led to a lot of problems at the port. I hope that these agencies, YOCO, OSP, FIC, and co, they have rules that they all respect, and then they respect each other's importance, and they are not in competition to prove that they are working harder, or they are not undermining each other. And I don't know which ministry coordinates that. Is it the National Security Minister, or is there a National Security Minister at all, or National Security Coordinator? Well, or is it more, who is in charge of that space?
Well, national security is a very, I don't know.
It's an amorphous.
So let's not even bring it into the discussion. I think at this point, once it has to do with breach of our laws in whatever shape or form, the Attorney General
is the supervising.
Exactly, and Article 88.
Okay.
Except that in specific cases or instances, his jurisdiction is sort of confined because we have set up independent institutions in some cases to deal with these matters. So in appropriate cases, he can always write and say that, look, he takes the view that there are some issues to be answered here. This, in my view, falls within your scope as Shiraj. This one falls within your scope as Yoko. This one falls within your scope as, say, OSP. So do the needful.
Okay.
And then they would take up the matter because the establishing, primary legislations dealing with these matters, in some cases, specifically say that the AG shall held the work of A, B, C, D. So in those cases, those institutions or authorities will be properly triggered. I think the question is whether beyond announcing these big numbers, we will see real action. That is often the case. You look at across the various political landscapes, you find that under NPP and the NDC, Auditor General's reports have been made public. Of course, some progress made elsewhere. In other places, virtually nothing gets done. So while these reports are indicating that A, B, C, D may have been done wrong, the question is whether the institutions responsible do have the requisite size of kahunas to say they want to prosecute these matters based on findings they themselves established.
So some 9 minutes to the top of the hour, still discussing some highlights of the very troubling Deloitte report, audit reports on the National Cathedral as our main subject.